Alrighty, for today's matchup, we're gonna have CCB versus FBI. We are your commentators. I am BT. This is Music with me today. Say hi, Music.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So we've got a
Today
very
we're going to be
an interesting matchup.
Yeah,
For me,
so today we have FBI and CCB. These are two teams that are doing very well in this Lilicrow tournament, so it should lead to some very interesting gameplay. FBI has, on the Survivor team, they have Gray, Lucy. They also have Eli, the famous commentator, and they have DX as dual faction, and yeah, they have, and CCB also has some uh, Zakui, which is a very strong hunter, and they also have a good Survivor team to go along with that. Anything else that you'd like to say so far?
yeah. So far we've seen the map bans and the map picks. We're gonna see them play on Ever Sleeping today. It will be FBI's map pick for that. So I'm really excited to see what their plan is for this map.
Yeah, and usually Ever Sleeping is a really good like kind of hunter map in the early games. This map very much favors Sangria on here, which is what I'm sure we're gonna find. A lot of these round ones are gonna have a lot of your Sangria matchups. So the nice thing about Ever Sleeping is once we get into like the bans, I mean, we can probably expect to see at least a Priestess ban, although Sangria doesn't necessarily need it. Sometimes it can be good to leave the Priestess just so that you can eat up a world ban and then you don't have to ban her later, and that frees you up for something else specific. Other common bans on this map, if you're going to go Sangria, Horde is one that's a strong ban, and Aquarian's also really good against Sangria. So, but on Ever Sleeping, if you don't get the Priestess, Toy Merchant is also, I would argue, almost equally as strong a character. Maybe not specifically against Sangria, but against other hunters. If we see any other hunters going round one, Toy Merchant is a very strong pick on this map.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Toy Merchant as well with the catapults. Very good transitioning, possibly over Graveyard Window or Corner House Loop. But as well, with the catapult, it is considered an object. So if you do dash into it, it will put your dash on cooldown, which can be, as we know, extremely detrimental since Sangria's really, trump card is that speed.
Yeah, yeah. As BT was saying there, Sangria is 100% all about controls. One missed dash could mean the difference between a really short first kite or getting that kite chased out. Because as we've seen, the hunters that typically do the best, it's about game sense and stuff, but Sangria's number one thing is all about controls. Same thing as with Clown. Clown is 100% a hunter that's based all around controls, and Sangria kind of fits in that same family.
Yeah, her speed, it's definitely you you have the freedom to make mistakes, but if you make like if you're in a chase and you miss one dash, it could mean the end for you because it could mean a flywheel, or it could mean they get to a window or a better area for them, or maybe they get support. Right, you just got to be super careful with those dashes. I'm really excited. I do believe FBI has an opera singer. I'm not too sure if CCB does. I believe we might see, frankly, a round one sculptor or BQ from their hunter Zach, from CCB's hunter Zach, which would be very exciting to see since BQ and sculptor are not too used lately in the competitive scene.
Yeah, in the competitive scene, I think last time I saw a sculptor being used, Alex WBG's hunter was using sculptor. I think one or two matches in IVL, although, but since then, sculptor primarily gets used a little bit more on this server, I would say. But as far as it goes, kind of international gameplay, Sculptor Round 1 is something that's not very common at all. It's usually about that Sangria, or I expect in the future we might actually see some IVs come around. But
Almost definitely.
I
Yeah.
believe IV is not allowed in this tournament.
Yep, that is correct.
Yeah, so No Ivy today, but for sure look for that in the future. Yeah, and then BQ is Hunter. We call her Tie Queen because usually Bloody Queen matches, especially at the competitive level, become sort of tie farms, what we would like to call it, because she's a chase hunter. It's the way that the math works out with the mirrors. You get it down slightly before the first set of pops if you hit both your mirrors, and especially with characters like Psychologist, getting lots of relevance there, and other characters such as Seer Barmaid that are able to eat multiple hits. Sometimes BQ can be tough, but usually in the end game can clutch up to get a tie. Bloody Queen, typically not a fantastic pick on this map, just for the sake that Bloody Queen's mirrors, sometimes the buildings can get in the way of the mirror placement. Although there are some really advanced tricks that you can do with Bloody Queen to catch survivors by surprise. The main ones that I'm thinking of is in the middle two-story and at the corner house. If you do your mirror swap at the correct place, it'll actually teleport you up to the second story, because the way that the switch mechanic works is it actually places you to the nearest ground regardless of elevation. So some big tricks in Eversleeping there, and also in Lakeside. The most famous one in Lakeside, of course, being where you do the mirror swap in the back of Big Boat and it teleports you onto the second story right on that cipher, which you can use to jump scare with a hunter that's not typically known for their jump scares usually. But of course, lots of tricks with BQ that could be potentially available, especially in the later rounds as hunters start going for those ties.
Yeah, most definitely. And as we saw in CCB's previous matchup versus, I believe, EOH, Zach was just lethal. Had lethal accuracy with those mirrors. I believe he didn't miss a single one. I think he may have missed one, but out of like 8 mirrors, I believe, they were just perfectly accurate, and they caught the survivors right at the point. Obviously you're going to want to bring the flywheel to counter those mirrors, but Zach was able to beautifully just completely ignore the power of the flywheel and just power through with these perfectly pinpoint mirrors.
Yeah, and another thing, if you know that you're going up against a Bloody Queen, we can expect to see characters such as Patient. Patient is very good. Basically, most characters that are transitioning characters are very good against Bloody Queen. Acrobat is notoriously a counter for Bloody Queen, because every time she mirrors, it works out that if you use a bomb, most cases you'll be able to, there will be one way or another to avoid a mirror. And get yourself just out of radius to the point where either you outspeed the mirror or Bloody Queen will just be hindered by movement and will be running into an object, and that can sometimes get in the way of Bloody Queen mirrors. But other than that, characters that can tank a lot of hits, your Psychologist, your Barmaid, your Seer, those are characters that are typically good against Bloody Queen. But the characters that eat a lot of hits are sometimes weak to Sculptor, actually. So I really like this kind of setup where you have both a Chip Hunter and a character like Bloody Queen, because they both kind of seek to counter opposite type team comps, which I think is something that's kind of undervalued in competitive play, to have multiple hunters that you can threaten that do almost opposite things. But I think on this map specifically, we can expect to see the Sculptor.
Yeah, most definitely. Zach with a very diverse hunter pool, as well as DX. I do believe I wasn't able to catch FBI's first matchup against Entropy, but I do know DX is a very versatile hunter, with a lot of very deadly hunters in his arsenal. So that'll be very exciting to see, especially on Eversleeping, which really is quite well known for loops such as Corner House or Windows. And yeah, as you said, music, we could definitely see a lot of potential maybe a potential Bloody Queen or a potential Sculptor here, from Zach, which just would be amazing to see, because I believe last time I was watching Zach play in a different community tourney against Team CH4, and he four manned them with his Sculptor on Eversleeping, So he's just an insane sculptor player, really perfectly pinpoint with both the statues and the spikes. So just it'll really be a wonder. It'll be great to watch if he does in fact decide to pull out that sculptor.
Yeah, so I think CCB has locked in that they are going to be the ones hunting first. So that will, of course, mean that Zach is the one that will be hunting first with the team, unless they are moving in their sub, which I don't believe is happening. Yeah, they ping Zach. So Zach will for sure be the one hunting during this first matchup. So if you are a round one hunter, you're basically seeking to get out as many eliminations as you can, especially if you know that the opposing team might be able to threaten with a Sangria there. Sangria is a hunter that, especially when she was just being released, became such a menace. But lately in tournaments, survivors with perfect play can sort of turn Sangria into a tie farm. A lot of first teams, what they'll be doing is they'll do all these sort of like advanced strats where they go like all sorts of. Some people might look at them being like a little bit weird builds where you have like your broken windows and your flywheel. So you have both 12 and 9, and so that type of build is something that you put on your kiter. You want them to take the first kite, and then you don't expect them to last all the way to borrow time, but you're basically just trying to bank on getting as much kiting time as you can, and then a lot of times you'll have either one tide, or you might actually run a few tides so that you'll be able to get multiple rescues.
Yeah, I do. I have been seeing that lately. There is a lot of comps, and lately we just haven't been seeing Opera Singer dominate as much. I'm not sure if Zach. I don't recall if Zach has an Opera Singer. He might, which would be amazing to see because I know he's a very strong hunter himself. So it'd be great to see him use Opera Singer here. And I know we're about to get into band picks here in a second. Once again, sorry about that, guys. There was a little bit of a delay, but we are here to make sure that we fill in any discrepancies here and there. We're just going ahead. We're about to get started on band picks here. But yeah, as music was talking about with opera singer, if we do, obviously that's kind of the trend that follows round one. Play opera singer. Get to see that opera singer. I won't be disappointed per se. Don't get me wrong. Opera singer is meta. You should play opera singer. She's a great hunter. But I would be more partial if maybe Zach pulled out the BQ or the sculptor, or maybe even I heard he has a disciple. A disciple would be great. Probably not on Ever Sleeping and probably not round one. But I'm just I look forward to perhaps seeing not a surprising pick.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. This map is certainly not the strongest map for a disciple. Definitely not the weakest map, but I would argue that and typically does well on the maps that are typically selected during round two. I'm not talking about like most recently with this COA because Gamekeeper meta has been kind of messing with that a little bit with having Moonlit round two. But the typical round two maps, especially on this server, tend to be Sacred Heart Hospital or Red Church. And those are both maps that are very, very strong for really all three hunters that we have been discussing, the Sculptor, the Bloody Queen, the Anne. I would argue that Hospital is maybe perhaps Anne's best map just by the way that Hospital kind of messes with the survivor activity sometimes. It really tends to be a strong disciple map, as long as you don't get kited too hard in the ruins area, which is typically the bane of Anne on that map. Otherwise, Anne typically performs really well there.
Yeah. And round one would be surprising, but not the worst pick ever. But I do believe a sculptor BQ would perform substantially better on Ever Sleeping. But with Zach's hunter pool, I wouldn't be too worried about that. Frankly, there's a lot a lot more we can see from him. Even just disregarding the BQ, the sculptor, the opera singer, and the possible Anne. I believe he has quite a few other hunters. I'm not exactly sure, but I know he's quite versatile when it comes to hunting. Um, but let's talk about FBI survivors here. I feel like we're not giving them any love. So with the FBI survivors, what they need to do here is, if it is an opera singer, right, they just need to play for that tie. Because as the
Yeah.
saying for comp goes, if you lose the opera singer match, if you lose the opera singer round one, it you have to crawl out of a hole that really is quite deep. So we really have to, the FBI survivors have to stay strong here and really, really build a comp that they think will work best against Zach's Hunter pool here, which, as we said, with it being so diverse, might be difficult for them. But I know they have some strong survivors, as Music said. They have the commentator Eli O with them, so he's gonna be taking in the action that he usually was commentating, right? So that'll be exciting. We got a bit of a celebrity here, right? That'll be fun.
Yeah, and they also have Lucy, which was actually the captain of a team that I used to hunt and train with a little bit, named Envy. So I'll be very interested to see how their gameplay has progressed along as well. And of course, we have Gray and DX. I believe DX is dual faction for FBI, so their hunter is also going to be playing Survivor for the team.
Yeah. DX, once again, a very versatile player, not just a hunter. But I know hunter is definitely his strong suit. But his survivor should not be looked down on. It is most definitely very, very strong. So it will be very interesting to see what he's able to pull off against Zach's Hunter here, against Zach's Hunter pool. Once again, sorry guys, we are, I believe, experiencing quite a little bit of a delay here with the band picks, but should be any minute now. We're just I believe one of the team's members is asleep. I'm not sure, but regardless, they're just getting rest. They're resting up before their matchup. Sleep is important.
Sleep is important. Take care of yourselves for sure.
Exactly. IDV is not worth missing sleep over, ever.
Yeah.
Never sleep. Or never don't sleep for IDV. Always sleep. Always sleep. Don't I'm not like you can't be hitting 3 sessions a day. That's not how it works here. It's unhealthy.
Except if it is, then you just you get really high tier very fast. That's the way that
At
works.
what cost, And that's just I don't know. Hitting 3 sessions a day is just, I find it insane. The people who are able to do it, and you're able to function well, and you're able to play consistently well, that's amazing. You are better than I, because if I hopped into a rank session when I'm sleep deprived, I'm going to run into the hunter and die in 4 seconds.
Yeah, so once again, talking about the FBI survivors, I've actually faced Eli a couple of times in tournament before. I know I have at least once. I forget if I faced him more than once, but that was back when Eli was playing on Fusion. There was one time, I don't remember, I think this might have been ICL, maybe another community tournament, but I remember Eli was playing Seer on that match, and I was playing Ann on hospital, and I ended up hitting Eli during the first chase. It was very funny. It was a very funny match. I remember the match ended. Um, I think it was Joggy was playing on Explorer during that match and ended up hiding away from me, like in some corner. It was quite the match to rewatch, and I was just sitting there looking, and that was the difference between a win and a tie. It was quite an interesting match, but yeah, Eli does have a lot of tournament experience. I know Lucy and Gray also Naturally, being on Envy, have had lots of tournament experience as well. But I am looking forward to seeing DX. I don't believe I've seen DX play in tourney before, but I'm very interested in seeing what they bring to the table here on the side of FBI.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be super interesting, super fun, very entertaining. And music reminded me, actually, I am hoping to see Explorer, because Explorer is quite strong against Opera Singer. Because as we know, she's speed, right? I am speed, right? Like Lightning McQueen said. Um, but when you're moving that fast, it becomes quite hard. It becomes quite hard to see the tiny little teeny eensy weensy Explorer hiding. And also with his Cipher Rush, it's just an added bonus. So I do believe if we see an Explorer, which I would love to see, it's going to be a huge counter to that Opera Singer, especially if that Opera Singer is just like, you have to be fast but take it slow, if that makes any sense. You just have to be very careful, searching every little grass to look for that Explorer, just to make sure that he doesn't, you know, allow you to pass right by him.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's just important because he can be extreme carry on the game, in my opinion. Right? You can get 3 50% pages. That's a cipher and a half right there. And obviously, it takes less time to search for the pages than it does to decode, or else nobody would play the character. But the big factor there is purely just the hiding, and the cipher rush that is beneficial there. And you got to be careful when looking around. I know myself, even when I'm not playing Opera Singer, I could be playing the slowest hunter in the game. There could be an Explorer 2 feet in front of me, and I just wouldn't see him. I have a terrible time finding survivors. If you meet me in rank, if you meet me anywhere, play Explorer. I will never find you. It will be like hide and seek. It'll be a 200-minute match of me just looking for you. It'll be the worst.
Yeah, and I think the map that Explorer is notorious for is actually Leo's Memory. There are famously some snow piles in that map where the entirety of Explorer's sprite can be hidden inside of the map to the point where the Explorer is actually not visible to the hunter at all, which can lead to some very funny early games where you're baiting out Tinnitus, but there's actually no way for the hunter to actually find you without swinging at each individual patch that's known to be like outside of factory, and there's also some outside of the shed. So if you're an Explorer main, I encourage you all to check that out. There's some very, very funny hiding places for sure.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, it's and as we said, fortunately for CCB Hunter here, on Ever Sleeping, it is not a very good map for Explorer, just because, as Music said, there's no like places to hide really. There's no little patches of grass or snow to hunker down in for the Explorer. So you really just have to watch out if you were to lock an Explorer here, but I doubt we will see an Explorer, being that it is Ever Sleeping Town, which is just so open. But what I'm hoping to see is everybody should be excited for this. Ever Sleeping. The only thing Ever Sleeping is remembered for is that beast of a hunter that travels around the map in a circle. Everybody knows what it is. It's the tram. Now, I want to see the tram steal some souls today. I want to see the tram run somebody over. I don't care who, the hunter, the survivor. I'm not biased. Hit anybody. Hit anybody. Hit multiple people. Hit both factions. Diversify, right? Hit everything. Crush it all. Hit it all. The tram wins. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see.
So it's your fault. You were manifesting in Wolves versus SC that both that DX was gonna get hit by the tram during round one.
Exactly. I don't care who wins. My apples are on the tram. That's where my apples are. I play safe bets.
the tram is gonna have the highest amount of deduction points for sure.
Exactly. The tram actually won Koa 7, guys. Rewatch the VOD. It wasn't GG, wasn't RC, it was the tram.
The tram.
MVP is the tram. That thing is a weapon. Like that is, and the best part about it is it doesn't pick favorites. It'll hit everybody. It'll hit everybody, everybody. It won't pick and choose. If you're in the way, you're going to get run down, and that can really be detrimental, right? You can be having a fantastic kite, and then all of a sudden, you know, vehicular manslaughter, and then you're just 1 second you're blissfully running through ever sleeping town. Next second you are in the basement. So you just got to watch out for that, especially well, really both factions, both sides, because it can be detriment to both the hunter and survivor, and they just got to watch out for that, especially if they do plan on picking up. If CCB's hunter plans on using opera singer, I would hate to see 1 second the opera singer's just dashing across the map, speed of lightning. Unfortunately, the tram doesn't care about speed. It's bigger than you. It's stronger than you. It's gonna put you in the ground.
Yeah, and just for you, a little tidbit for you guys. One trick that's very funny. I don't expect to see this at all during this matchup. But if you're gonna play Mad Eyes, you can hit the survivors out of the tram with one of the walls, and it's very funny. So you can catch some survivors off guard. Any of you all Mad Eyes players, I've got Mad Eyes tricks. One of them is that if you place it just right, you can knock the survivors out of the tram with a wall.
Yeah. And
Oh,
speaking of that,
he's
we
starting
have
with a
our
bang.
first two bands, which are going to be Priestess and Seer. As Music talked about, that Priestess, that Seer, super strong against both Bloody Queen, and Priestess against really everybody, frankly. Really, really hate that character when I'm hunting. But yeah, the Priestess and Seer bands from Zach uh, on this Ever Sleeping matchup. And
Also,
we're just going to have to see what FBI picks up to counter those.
yeah, as a side note, I just wanted to make aware for the audience that Psyche will actually be subbing for Lucy, I believe. If I'm understanding the chat correctly, Psyche will be playing
No
Survivor for
shot. Wait,
FBI.
really?
So
That
here we
was
go.
here?
You got
Yo!
two
Oh,
commentators
oh yeah.
in
Oh no.
FBI.
But chat, you don't understand. You don't understand how much funnier this just got for me. How much more fun this got for me. I know Psyche. I consider him a friend of mine, and now the shoe's on the other foot. Normally, like he commentated Koa. Eli commentated Koa. I play the game, but now I get to commentate Psyche, and oh yeah, that's gonna be fun.
We get to commentate Psyche.
Exactly,
And
we
now
get to commentate Psyche.
now we just found out about the first two locks, which are Coordinator and Patient, which I believe are two very, very strong picks if you're planning on going against an opera singer. Now, the reason why these are two very strong first picks, and you're like, well, why not play Antiquarian or Toy Merchant, like what we were mentioning about? It's important to note that the first two survivors that you lock in will be global banned from this point on, so Coordinator and Patient will no longer be able to be used. Coordinator, usually you only want to play Coordinator against an opera singer, and Patient, the only other time Patient usually functions is if you're playing on Moonlit for some 4-stop tricks, but as we all know, Aeroplanist and Acrobat can both do very, very similar tricks, and we just saw that, actually, we see the next two locks here, I believe.
This is one of the fastest band
Antiquarian.
picks ever.
Yeah, this is speedy. So we have Antiquarian and Wildling for the last two picks here. First of all, in the chat, make sure to say happy birthday, Murrow.
Oh yes, you got to wish him a happy birthday, especially since
It's always Murrow's birthday. Happy birthday, Murrow.
it's always Exactly. I
On my
believe he
channel, I have a happy birthday,
turns.
Murrow emote.
He
Happy birthday,
turns
Merle.
everything today.
Yeah. And then we have Antiquarian. Antiquarian is very, very strong against Opera Singer, and it'll be very interesting to see because I believe we had talked about this hunter may actually go Sculptor, which I believe is actually somewhat strong against this comp. Some things to keep in mind. Sometimes it's very tough for Antiquarian to get really close to actually get those stick hits on the hunter if it's a Sculptor. Patient is very strong though because he is a transitioner, which is one of the main ways to counter Sculptor. But Coordinator, one thing that you have to be very careful about with Coordinator is that the hunter can sometimes actually block your flare guns with a statue, which is something that's maybe not necessarily quite as well known, but that's something to keep in mind that the Sculptor can actually block your flare gun if they time their statues at the correct time. Easiest to do with the vertical statues.
Yeah, and we are gonna see a Sculptor lock from CCB's Hunter Zach here, which, as we talked about, is going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, one thing that'll be very interesting, playing Murrow on a big map like this. One thing that's very nice about having Murrow is that he can traverse large amounts of the map very quickly, which means that you don't necessarily have to have Murrow transition to the rescue very quickly. And Murrow's actually subtly quite difficult for a Sculptor to stuff there. So when we see that the survivors are making their way into the lobby, we will be starting up momentarily. Now, as far as map spawn positions, we can probably expect to see the wildling spawn in middle for sure. And then it's kind of the survivor choice who they want to put in cabin, who they want to put maybe towards close to the graveyard area, and who they want to put kind of above the wildling in between corner house and graveyard.
Yeah, most definitely. Spawns, once again, are going to be very important here against this Sculptor, because if you spawn in an open area, you're going to be far more safer than if you spawn in an enclosed area where the Sculptor will just bit by bit pick at your health, and then knock you down eventually here. So we are going to get into it here soon. We're going to see who exactly is going to take the lead in this first round, because really often it can be seen what happens, what a matchup's going to turn out like from just the first half of the first round. But also there have been upsets. Anything is possible. But here we are getting into the spawns here of round one, first half of FBI versus CCB. Once again, I am your commentator, BT, joined along with Music Man here, and we're just going to get into this matchup here.
Yeah, so we're in the spawn select screen, and what we're going to see. So yeah, the coordinator went to the cabin. Psyche, the patient, ended up spawning towards that kind of two-story area, and Antiquarian spawned. We call this Dancing Geisha up here. Now, I think we can expect to see. There are two routes that this Sculptor could take here. They could either go towards the coordinator or go towards the Antiquarian there. Now, Psyche is probably going to want to decode in that middle two-story. That'd probably be ideal because Graveyard is surely going to be blocked as long as they're carrying that trait. And we do see, wow, it's a no detention Sculptor build. This is going to be an upright build. So we're going to see that pallet breaking. Interesting that they went all the way up to the window block. There are a lot of times not so many key windows to block here, except for perhaps the ones in cabin there. Early chip shot on the coordinator. Fantastic job on this Sculptor here.
Yeah, very, very early chip here. We do see windows on this Cordy, so she is going to be able to play around this cabin here. But ooh, beautiful discipline from the Cordy here. Oh, but Zach getting a very, very good chip there on the Cordy, which is going to leave her at one knockdown, one normal hit, and she will be knocked down. And excitement is up, and it will be popped. No, he blocks it. He doesn't even need to use it. That is huge. That is a very early down without even having to use the excitement on the Cordy gun. Beautiful block from Zach here, and that's going to be the first share for the Cordy here.
Yeah, so the benefits of actually saving your excitement here and not having to use it for the coordinator gun. First of all, the survivors don't know what the trait is, so they could be expecting blink, and especially because they don't know if they are going if that the hunter is probably not running detention. They've only just got an indicator that there's windows, so they might just think that it's an up-down build. And typically, if the sculptor is going to run up-down, they end up running teleport with that. That's usually the norm. But these survivors are looking like, okay, patient might be going in for the rescue, but I won't be surprised if the survivors decide they want to sell that first rescuer, which looks like will be the case, and it looks like Psyche will be taking the second kite here.
Yeah, Zach really just completely perfect game sense here, looking at the ciphers, seeing them shaking, especially with that wanted order, knowing that they're not going in for the save, so just leaving that chair, going straight for Psyche the patient here, and the second chase will be, I believe Psyche's transitioning towards cabin here, using one hook here. Will he be able to kite this out, especially with no blink from Zach here? I do believe he's going to take an early hit here. Cancels the second hook. Oh, that is going to be very, very, very detrimental to this patient here, just because the Cordy had already used the pallet at cabin, so he is going to have to transition away, and does use that second hook to transition right back into cabin, and I believe he has windows, so we might be seeing him take one more chip here, and if he goes down, we might see a potential 4K here with the gameplay. Yep, another chip from Zach. Once again, we talked about it. These beautiful, perfectly aligned chips. He's just pinpoint accuracy with them. Really, really scary and dangerous hunter. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind, yeah, Murrow is going to be making their way in for that rescue. Now, if you're the survivors here, you want to try to make sure that your Cypher Rush is enough here. So we see Antiquarian is trying to rush one of the Cypher machines there. Now the Sculptor wants to potentially stuff this rescue, actually, because they are max presence, and sometimes it can actually be very difficult for a Wildling to actually get that rescue in, because of the fact that they need to dismount the boar before actually going in for that rescue. Although Wildling is a very fantastic rescuer against Opera Singer, sometimes can be very tough to get that rescue against Sculptor. But nonetheless, Eli masterfully gets that rescue, but Tide Turner will be popping here, and Psyche will be finding their way to their actually, I went past half.
It did. So Psyche will be taking a trip to the manor here. And unfortunately, with no knowledge of trade swaps still available, it might be looking like a potential 4K first half for CCB here.
Yeah, it's just all about, okay, so this Sculptor, this is what we call kind of the slugging process here. This hunter needs to be very careful to not let any ciphers pop during this time, because if it gets to an end game, that's how you might take what's completely a 4 survivor elimination position and throw it into a 3 survivor elimination position, which in competitive makes a very big difference, because you want to guarantee that your survivors at least can tie the round. And we're going to see a couple of hits from the bamboo stick here. Excellent flywheel to get rid of that Sculptor, or that chip shot there. And we see gets a perfect spike on Wildling, however, does not have statues immediately to use. So that's just going to be keeping an eye on Eli there, trying to make sure that Eli will not be able to decode that cipher. And
beautiful discipline. I think they might pop here. They are going to pop here, and we are in the end game of round 1 first half here. As we said, quite a fast-paced game, really, with how fast the downs were. Beautiful flip from the Antiquarian here. The dungeon is in graveyard, so we could potentially see a tie here from FBI. Oh, it is going to be the excitement. So I believe that will guarantee the 3K here on the side of CCB.
Yeah, and that gate is open now, I believe. So Wildling will be making their way out of the exit to secure that 1 survivor escape, which is honestly the best that the survivors could ask in this situation. And we can see where it may have been a slight misplay on Zach's part, not trump carding to teleport and getting to that last cipher, because that actually allowed Eli to pop the cipher. However, excellent job in the early and middle game, getting the very, very early down on the coordinator there, not having to expend freight, and then going for Psyche at roughly the halfway mark on the rocket chair, recognizing that they were just going to sell, so might as well start the next chase much earlier, and actually got all 3 hooks out very, very quickly on Psyche the patient there. So that is going to be a 3 survivor elimination for round 1, and that's going to put FBI slightly on the back foot here. Now we're going to see what happens as DX hunts during the first round, part 2.
Yeah, so as Music said, that is going to be a 3-1 in favor of CCB here, round 1 first half. Beautiful statues, beautiful game sense and discipline. The survivors were able to pull out a 1 escape, which frankly it's quite good with the situation that they were in. And we are going to see if DX can pull back and answer with a 3K or possibly even a 4K for that round 1 win of his own here, because he's really got to push for it here. He's got to be aggressive for this 3K or this 4K if he wants to get this round 1 win here, because if he allows a tie to sneak through, it's going to put him in the, and as we talked, if you lose round 1, it puts you in such a deficit where you really need to pick it up, and you need to play aggressive, and and I do believe DX has an opera singer, so we might actually see that opera singer here. We are getting into bans and picks here, so yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so our first 2 bands are going to be Antiquarian and Dancer. Now, these 2 bands lead to indicate that we're probably going to see an opera singer here, just because opera singer really does not like Antiquarian, and Dancer is a support character that's very popular. I feel like I kind of noticed this a lot more when it comes to both teams on this server, and teams in Japan seem to really like Dancer as an assist character. And now they're going to be getting on with the first 2 locks. Now, if you're the survivors here, you're free to use Priestess on Eversleeping, which is something that you might want to go for. Either that, or you might lock Seer here. But again, if you lock one or the other, they become global bans. So we might actually see, especially if you're expecting an opera singer, you might see the gardener, the perfumer, the coordinator, as we saw during the last match. We might see a few survivor picks kind of in that realm. We might even see kind of a lawyer lock early. If you're the survivors here, you want to try to pull for at least a tie here, because your hunter gave you a 3K and you want to play as safely as possible.
Yeah, most definitely. The survivors of CCB here should just be looking for that safe tie to take that round 1 win. So it will push them ahead a little bit here. And as Music was saying, with the band picks, we should definitely, I would assume we see a Priestess or a Seer if DX does let that sneak through here, which would be could be detrimental, because as we talked about, those survivors are extremely strong. Priestess able to traverse the map, just go through buildings with the global portal as well, which can be a game changer if you allow a survivor to just traverse across the map in one quick go. And with the Seer, a free shield essentially at your will and beckon, your beckon and call. You just got to be really careful against the Seer, especially if you're playing a single hit hunter like Opera Singer.
Yeah, so there's a slight delay when it comes to the survivor picks here. No matter, we can keep commentating as we kind of see it here. Now, the thing about, you were mentioning you might want the Priestess or the Seer, but once again, it's very important to note that if you were to lack one or both of those survivors, you will not be able to use them in later rounds, which, especially with the Priestess, can be something that's very, very strong kind of in round 3. and by the fact that Sangria doesn't always mind the Priestess so much. Especially because she can use that remnant. If you try to do the Priestess thing where you go through a portal and double back, you can just go back to a remnant, and it's not quite as punishing as it is in other kind of matchups. So we will see. Okay, it looks like CCB is actually going to have to sub out one of their survivors here. So that's going to be their first sub. It looks like in this tournament, if I understand correctly, teams are allowed 2 subs per matchup.
That is correct. They are allowed 2 subs per matchup. So we will be seeing the hunter we just watched, Zach, join the survivor team here on CCB. He will be surviving in this next match here, which is going to be exciting.
Yeah, and we just got our first 2 locks. As we kind of predicted, the Gardener and Coordinator were the first 2 locks here. We were saying if you're expecting a Sangria, those are typically 2 of the strongest first locks here. And Gardener, of course, having the bubble makes her really important against a Sangria. She gets the bubble during the early game, which makes her more durable, being able to eat 3 hits in the early game. And Coordinator, if she ends up getting chased in the early game, can use the gun super early before excitement would even be up. So Cord is also basically a guaranteed rescue as long as there's no excitement on the table. But another thing that makes Gardner very, very strong is that when she bubbles up, she can actually rescue injured, which is something that not a lot of survivors can actually do.
Yeah, as Music was saying, Gardner very, very strong against that opera singer. Basically, free 40 seconds kite. Even if you get hit, it's so strong. And with the rescuing, with the ability to prime a bubble, if you don't know, if you take a hit as you're about to get your bubble, it will prime that bubble, meaning that the next time you stand still, you will instantly be bubbled, which can a lot of the time surprise a hunter into trying to swing at you, thinking that your bubble isn't fully formed so they can get an easy down, and then they hit your shield, and it could give you potentially an escape or a rescue. It can be so strong with against Opera Singer. If we do see Opera Singer, which we are going to see the next ban here, which is going to be Acro, and Acro, pretty good survivor, pretty diverse survivor there.
And we actually just got our next lock, which is going to be Embalmer. Embalmer, of course, being the survivor that can summon coffins, and if the Embalmer goes down, the Embalmer can actually coffin back. And typically, if you run an Embalmer on this map, a lot of times what you want to do is you want to make sure that the Embalmer gets the kite, so that when they do their first kite, they're going to want to get as far away from their coffin as they can. And it can actually make it so that you get so much extra time when you kind of get that first kite, because essentially when the hunter takes you to your first chairing, you can rebirth, and that will make it so that there's 8 seconds, you'll respawn, you get a shield and tide about it. You get invincibility shield and you get tide. So it buys out as much time as like a regular rescue. Now, before Sangria kind of came along, a lot of times this would actually bait out kind of a trump card switch. But with Sangria can actually traverse, especially a map like Eversleeping, where there's quite a few obstacles around quickly enough to catch up to the Embalmer there. But if you leave the Embalmer alone, this becomes very difficult for the hunter after the pop, because the Embalmer, if they have spotted out a survivor during the match, they can actually move their coffin to another survivor, and if they end up going down in the late game, they can actually respawn outside the gate or wherever the Embalmer wants to do it. It's usually either outside of the gate or over the dungeon spawn.
And yeah, as Music was saying, with the Embalmer pick, we are going to see a Psych ban answered by CCB with a Merc pick. So that the comp will I believe be Guardy, Coordinator, Embalmer, Merc, looking to counter that Opera Singer here, round 1, second half here. The question is, will DX answer by giving them what they want, or will he take them on a bit of a surprise, bit of a jump here? Will he go for the meta, or will he go for a completely different pick and just really take them by storm? In round one, second half here, we gotta. What CCB survivors have to do here is not only do they have to play safe for that tie, but they can't allow themselves to get 4K'd because that round one to FBI would just make it so hard to come back, especially with then round two, you have the global bans and you have the hunter bans being allowed. And it really could just stop any kind of push you may have started with Zach's round one 3K there. So CCB survivors here really have to keep their heads on, keep their eyes straight forward, and just play their best of their strengths here.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now with the psychologist ban, I believe it's very interesting that DX opts to ban the psychologist as opposed to banning a rescuer. A lot of times what you have is in these comps against Sangria, you have one rescuer and then three essentially kiters here. And Balmer can sort of count as this assist. We actually see a Geisha here, which is actually quite surprising here. Geisha is very good on this map. Sometimes can be a bit of a tie farm, the same way kind of Bloody Queen kind of functions. However, if you play Geisha with a very aggressive setup, I know that there have been some Geishas that have experimented with running abnormal in the early game, although typically it's kind of that trump card detention blink type setup. Yeah, this is a very, very interesting setup. And I believe this actually makes it the Embalmer pick even stronger because Geisha a lot of times cannot actually get back to the Embalmer coffin as quickly as a Sangria would. So this is going to be a very, very exciting round one that admittedly quite took me by surprise.
Yeah, we will be getting into the custom here, inviting the players, getting everybody all in here. And yeah, as Music said, seeing a Geisha here gonna be very, very exciting because, as we said, DX deviating from that opera singer round one here. And it's gonna be a good show to watch. You gonna play their Music Man? You playing on CCB there?
My account was gonna play. Hey, put me in, coach. Never mind.
We almost
I
saw
had the
Music
stream
playing
up on
for
my other
CCB.
tab, and it was covering that I was actually okay. That's very funny. Okay, yeah, put me in, coach.
Music actually carries, guys. DX will surrender if Music joins.
My worker bee PC alt. That's what's up. That's what's up. Um, yeah. So I think the one potential setback that may actually happen from this comp is, especially against a Geisha, is that the Merc and Coordinator are both rescuers on this comp, which may mean that the decoding ends up slightly behind if one of the survivors goes down early. Now, Coordinator's decoding debuff, if I recall directly, doesn't actually kick in until a survivor is on the chair. So a lot of times what happens is that Coordinator will go in for the first rescue, and then Merc might go in for the second rescue. But we'll see what the spawns are. I will expect to see Mercenary spawn middle, and it looks like they're actually going to spawn the Cord at Cabin, which I believe is almost kind of a mind gaming type setup because typically the Cabin there is going to be the first chase there, as I believe it was during the Sculptor match as well. And we're going to see the Geisha actually spawning Dancing Geisha, fittingly enough. It may actually opt to chase the Embalmer here in the early game. Now I will expect that this Embalmer is probably taking Broken Windows and Flywheel. Embalmer typically does not need to have borrowed time because if they end up getting down, there is a decent likelihood that they will end up being able to resurrect themselves with the coffin during in the case of a final pop.
Exactly. So yeah, we're getting into round one, second half here. CCB survivors versus FBI's Hunter. Really got to answer back from that round one first half. Zach getting that 3-point, 3-kill elimination here. So we'll see what CCB survivors answer back with and what DX answers back with.
Oh, Tram was so close. Tram was so close.
Say,
Oh, that scared me for a second. But as predicted, this Geisha will be chasing the Embalmer there. Now, smart move by this Geisha actually going up to the second story. When Geisha goes up to the second story, she can actually throw her butterfly slightly further to get a better dash. It's also a bit mind-gamey in that it's very tough for the survivor in that positioning to know exactly where the hunter is at. And wow, what an early down from this hunter. Gets a down before flywheel is even up. Yeah. Anything you'd like to add, BT?
Yeah, that is going to be a very fast down on two separate survivor chairs here before trait or flywheel's even up. And surprising choice to not use the coffin, probably because he's chaired already on the ciphers, so might as well use their tides here. We are going to see a blink from the Geisha here, which does mean if Cordy decides to take a shot there, there will be no counterplay from the Geisha, unless, of course, she makes a hit.
Yeah, so the main reason why Merc is rescuing here is because of the fact that the Embalmer actually ended up accidentally dying on the Mercenary Cypher, gets the double hit, so now this Geisha is in a completely winning position. And we're going to see this flywheel come out. Nice flywheel by the Embalmer, just trying to buy some extra time. Tide Turner is still up, but now that Tide Turner is down, every second here is lost time from the Hunter. And
beautiful
magnificent pallet stun. That was a very critical pallet stun there.
Ooh, beautiful angle of the hitbox there to avoid hitting that Guardy bubble. I believe we are going to see a coffin here. I'd be surprised if we don't. Geisha, obviously DX, guessing that, moving closer to the coffin just so she can get right on top of that coffin here.
Yeah, so Embalmer is going to respawn there. Geisha is going to be able to get on the case here very, very quickly. Now, Embalmer was rescued once, which means that there is one extra coffin, although we aren't going to be able to see it very likely because Embalmer will be the next chase here, and yes, will be going down. And one thing that's very important to note for Embalmer, if Embalmer does place a coffin, it actually gets removed once the Embalmer gets eliminated from the manor. This is something that's very, very important in the end game. If the Embalmer ends up leaving the match with those kind of like end game situations that I was talking about from before, the Embalmer will actually be removed if the Hunter forces the Embalmer outside of the gate.
Yeah, exactly. We are going to be seeing the Embalmer go back to the manor here. We're seeing a chase on Merc here. Very beautiful elbow pad from the Merc here in response to the Geisha's dash here. Going to be kiting at the corner house. We did see a trait swap, to teleport here in expectation of that end game, but these survivors are doing quite well here. We are going to see a teleport onto the Cordy. Beautiful hop here. Will we see a dash here? Ooh, that is going to be in the pallet. Oh, yep. Beautiful pallet stun. We love to see it.
And then one thing to note, this coordinator does still have a gun, so we'll see if that ends up coming into a factor here. Now, this coordinator does have flywheel, so coordinator might be able to just make it to the next pallet base kiting. Although, yeah, we are going to see that flare gun there as expected. And now we'll be making their way over to this, we call this island over here. And we have these two little pallets in the building right next to island. Excellent job. Now, what the Geisha did there, it may have looked like a simple dash, but that's actually not very simple to do. The coordinator was trying to hug the wall, so what the Geisha did was actually turn their camera so that they were able to kind of get in the area there where they could actually have visibility on the survivor. This is one of the main things that makes playing Geisha so difficult, especially at the competitive level, is that you need to be able to get the camera angles just right so you can kind of clip those you can kind of get those clip dashes whenever you really need them. Now, there is one cipher remaining, and one thing that's kind of important to note here is that despite having a very early down, this actually is looking to be very close to a tied situation. Let's look at how the last ciphers are doing. Oh yeah, that cipher at Corner House is almost done, and there's one at Graveyard that's halfway completed that Zach may be going for momentarily. Gets a beautiful hit through the window there.
Yeah, that is going to be a down. Is going to be chaired, I believe, on that cipher at Corner House, which is quite close to primed here. But of course, coordinator is on another cipher. Will we see DX teleport to that cipher or just camp this out and save TP for the end game here? We will.
I think if
We'll
you're
have to see.
going for a win, it makes sense to save the trait for sure.
Quite an early
Now,
hit here. Grabbing
as
the
Geisha,
butterfly to avoid the dash. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, as Geisha, it's very important that the mercenary actually ate the butterfly there. One thing that's sometimes not immediately obvious is that Geisha's dash will always prioritize the butterfly that's leached onto a survivor. So even if the Geisha did end up placing a butterfly and trying to dash to it, it would prioritize the mercenary's butterfly.
Yeah, we are going to see. We're getting closer and closer to end game. That cipher is primed. Guardy here, I believe, trying to get that bubble off since Geisha didn't hit it. Oh, might get a free rescue here. Is going to get the hit, and we are into the end game here. 0 elbow pads from the Merc. Dying in a corner is going to get that dash out here, but is only on second chair. Is just going to slug the Merc here, looking to go for that really aggressive gameplay. As we said, it's end game here. They are going to need DX does need a 3 kill here to tie it out and a 4 kill to grab that round 1 victory. Is choosing to go after the coordinator here. Quite interesting, just because that coordinator still has item. Beautiful flywheel. Oh, beautiful avoidance of the terror shock. That is going to be, and she has a full football. I don't know why she's dropping these pallets. Pretty interesting. Probably just to avoid the dashes, close encounters there. But Guardy is opening the other gate. Merc is still, and Dungeon's in the middle. So yep, that's just going to be a teleport. But the gate is already open. Oh, and detention runs out in 50 seconds. We could see a potential 3 escape here. DX really needs to at least grab onto this tie at the very least. The possibility of a four kill is already out, so this will be a tie at least for round 1. But if this Merc is able to kite out this detention here, we could be seeing a 3 escape.
Ooh, and doesn't quite get the hit there.
There we go. So
we almost saw what the downfall could have been, going super aggressive on that endgame. If the mercenary had been able to get dungeon there, the survivors would have been in a absolutely magnificent position going into round 2. Now they still are in a very, very good position, being that they ended up getting this tie, which Geishas typically end up getting in these competitive matchups. So we can't say we're too terribly surprised with the result there. But these survivors end up being in a magnificent position. CCB taking round 1, which, as we saw in Koa yesterday, when you claim round 1 for your team, sometimes things can tend to snowball, but we're going to have to see how FBI is able to fight back from here.
Yeah, CCB will be taking that first round with the points being, I believe, 5-3 here with a 3 on CCB and with another. Yep, that'll be 5-3. Round 1 win will be going to CCB. But as we talked about Geisha, that tie hunter, DX really tried to play aggressively there, and it almost worked. He was playing perfectly with these very well timed dashes, cheering on ciphers. But unfortunately, the survivors of CCB just answering back with if you're gonna play Geisha, go for that aggressive endgame. We're just gonna play it perfectly, passively, and get that tie so we can get our team that round 1 win there. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and we can see the power of the comp that they invested in when they had that mercenary and coordinator. They were able to get very secure rescues. The first rescue on Embalmer went. They ended up getting double hit, which was a little bit of a misstep, but they still ended up getting the rescue successfully. anyways. But Cord also was able to keep Gun for late game, and Gardner, yeah, that's her name. Gardner ending up being able to use that bubble at very key moments of the game as well. Now, the thing about Embalmer is a very tough survivor to win against, because we saw the fact that the Coffin actually ended up buying so much time for the survivors that the Hunter had to traverse like the entire map to catch up. And the nice thing about being able to rescue yourself is that you also don't pull another survivor off of the cipher. So even though it was a very, very fast first down, the survivors were still able to use all of these factors to get the tie that they needed to close round one.
Exactly. And so we're just going to have to see how FBI responds to this point differential, which obviously isn't very large. But just CCB taking that first round, we really have to recognize, just because FBI did take the loss in the first round here, DX's Geisha was still, beautiful dashes. I expect that we might honestly see a Geisha ban from CCB survivors here, just to kind of push DX into different territory here. And then with that round one first half sculptor there, beautiful statues, really pulling forward for his team there, allowing that eventual round one win. We're gonna have to see how FBI responds here, especially with now, obviously, as we talked about, these global bans in place, and these now available 100 ban per team here. We might see a sculptor ban, we might see a geisha ban. Who knows? Maybe they'll just ban opera, just in case. Who knows? But we just got to see how FBI answers with, or what FBI answers with here, and we are getting, I believe, FBI banning a map here. As we discussed, round one was FBI's map pick, so that is another unfortunate part of them losing that round on that map pick there. Because as we know, with a map pick, it's so strong. A plan can work so great on one map and not work great on another. It's just, you have to really have a plan for each map here. So we're gonna see CCB pick a map here in a second. And I'm just really excited to see what maps we see them use here.
So again, talking about the map ban, Hospital was actually banned during the first round, and in this tournament, it looks like once a map is banned, they are perma-banned for the rest of the matchup. So both Hospital and Eversleeping are off the table, of course, because we just played on Eversleeping. Now, if you are, I believe, yeah, FBI is banning a map. If I was in the FBI's position, I would guess I would ban Red Church. Red Church does tend to have a very, very strong time mentality. Because the ciphers are so close together, the cipher rush ends up being very, very fast. Now, of course, it changes depending on what hunters that you play. But of course, we had talked about how Zach has a very, very strong Bloody Queen. And I mean, those are the kinds of hunters that are very, very strong on a small map like Red Church, and also tend to be very tie-oriented hunters. So I would expect to see. Oh wait, yeah, Church ban, as expected. We just got in the chat that they ended up banning Church, and they are going to be locking Moonlit.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And yeah, if you guys didn't know, Music actually has a part-time job as a fortune teller, which is the reason he was able to sniff out that Red Church ban there. But we are going to see a Moonlit pick here, which, as we talked about, Moonlit very, very strong, both for survivors and hunters. Just not even talking about the coaster, disregarding the coaster for a second. That 2-story, that God Kite, first stop, fourth stop, tent. There's just so many places around this map which are just so strong, both to kite and to hunt in. So I'm really, we are going to see DX hunting first here for FBI survivors or FBI here. DX, as we saw, beautiful geisha, pinpoint dashes, very strong and scary hunter. I'm excited to see what he's going to pull out here on this Moonlit map.
Yeah, and Moonlit is a very interesting lock, I would say, because the hunters we have been discussing, Bloody Queen and Anne, at least in my experience, these don't tend to be maps that particularly benefit those hunters, but um, perhaps Zach has something up their sleeve. Also, Moonlit tends to be a map that prioritizes imbalance and chaos. It's not very tie oriented. Usually in this map, by what I've observed in competitive, one side is going to win the matchup. At least that's the way. Ties are a lot of times quite rare in at the competitive level on this map. And in Koa, we've seen Gamekeeper just wreak havoc on this map because there are a lot of broken hook spawns, as we've seen round one. GG Sham playing the Gamekeeper round one and having some very, very nasty hooks that took RC by surprise.
Yeah, most definitely. We are going to be getting into the ban picks here. FBI is going to be banning Seer and Merc here. So
Oh yeah, FBI is hunting
as we
first.
talked about, yeah, FBI is hunting first on Moonlit. Yeah, with Seer and Merc. Yeah, tell me a little bit about why you want to ban Seer and Merc music.
Yeah, so Mercenary, of course, a lot of times in these matchups, you want to ban one rescuer. Usually you wait until your second ban to ban a rescuer. That's just the way the pacing usually works out, but this works too. Typically, survivors will either be picking Mercenary or First Officer. Sometimes Wildling on this map because it's a large map. Large maps leave potential to have the Wildling, but I would expect this team to probably run First Officer here, especially because we may not see Opera Singer. This map does tend to be very tough just mechanically to play Opera Singer on. So if you play Opera Singer here, it can be a good map, but it is very, very hard to play on because it's very, very open. And we're going to see our first two locks are Acro and Embalmer. Acro, of course, has very, very broken fourth stop stuff that can go on. And Embalmer, if you stick the Embalmer in the second story, a lot of times you can get some situations like what the last matchup had where the survivor may have a rough first kite, but if you end up away from your coffin, you can either use the rebirth on the first rescue, or during the last match we saw a rebirth on the second rescue. And it looks like, yeah. Now the thing about that's interesting here is that they didn't opt to actually lock in the priestess, which is usually a very, very strong pick on this map. What are the permabans? Gardener and Cord. Okay, yeah. So interesting that they actually opted not to go for Priestess or Antiquarian. So I won't be surprised if they lock in Antiquarian here as their third lock, assuming that they have an Antiquarian player. Anything else you'd like to add, BT?
Yeah. So we are going to see that Geisha ban, really respecting DX's Geisha, very strong Geisha. They're like, listen, we got a tie against your Geisha, but we're not risking it again. Good player, could potentially, especially on Moonlit, with Geisha, she can dash straight over those bridges, just completely ignore that terrain. And that can be so strong for transitioning and just cutting off survivors there. And it is going to look like their last pick, as Music talked about. Once again, told you he's a fortune teller. The first officer pick for CCB. So that does mean the lineup so far is going to be looking Acro, Embalmer, first officer. As Music said, me as well, I would not be surprised if we do see an Antiquarian if DX doesn't choose to ban that out here.
Yeah, and there are, of course, on Moonlit, there's so many characters that you can pick. If you want an assist character, Toy Merchant is very good on this map. I believe I've seen some cases where female dancer is used on this map, although admittedly that's not quite as common. But Psychologist could also be used here. Psychologist is actually a very, very strong pick to put in first stop. So if you would like, oh, the Psychologist was banned. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
unfortunately,
won't
we're not going to see Psychologist today. she is being put in timeout. DX has placed her in timeout for the time being, and there we go. As we said, I
Let's
swear, Music
go.
is an alien. He's not from the planet Earth. He has
So
superpowers
good at
and was able
predicting,
to sniff
guys.
out the Antiquarian pick from CCB Survivors here. As we said, Antiquarian, very strong survivor here. Tell me a little bit about why they're picking Antiquarian on this map here, Music.
Yeah, so there are a lot of comps that are very, very common on this map. Antiquarian, typically you have coordinator, antiquarian, psychologist are kind of the three most common survivors that you're going to put at the first stop. And the reason why we have three that kind of typically spawn there is to account for any bans that might take place. So Antiquarian is usually the one that you put in first stop. Embalmer. Embalmer is one that's very, very strong to put in two-story. Other common placements in two-story is Perfumer, and Lawyer is actually a very, very strong character to put in two-story. Basically forces the hunter to chase there if you can get it. But Embalmer works just as well. Acrobat does have some bombs that are very, very broken in the fourth stop, being that you can kind of farm the four stop, and if you bomb correctly, you can actually jump over that little median where the coaster comes in to make a stop. And first officer will typically be spawned at the we call it bridge, the bridge spawn. There are two bridges in Moonlit. One that shows up top at the top of the spawn select screen. We call that one bridge. And then the one below that, we call that back bridge if we ever need to call out that area. The one that's close to working carousel. But yeah, and their builds are locked, so we will see the hunter in a second. It'll be very interesting to see what the hunter opts to go for, to go very aggressively for a win.
Yeah. Yeah. Any predictions for the hunter there, fortune teller, Music man?
I actually think that Bloody Queen might actually work here. Honestly, Bloody Queen or Anne both work here because if you're the hunter, this is, hey, it's Anne. That's it. I'm retiring now. One match commentating, I'm done. The reason why I think Anne is strong here is because of the fact that she does tend to be tie-oriented, and being that you ended up getting the first round victory, what you want to do is you want to keep getting ties and putting the hunter in a place where they have to win to pull back into the matchup. Now, Anne is one of those hunters that, yes, she's very, very tie-oriented, but she does have very strong camp, and that's what makes her potentially have winning potential, whereas Bloody Queen, there is a little bit more map pressure with Bloody Queen, but in, like, the competitive level, Bloody Queen is almost never able to play for a win, unless you're, like, SE Laddie or something like that. But yeah, the main thing that I'd be interested to see with the Anne is what type of build they want to go for. Because if you're very tie oriented with the Anne, you might see left down blink. That's typically the stereotypical tie setup, and it is for like any of your tie hunters besides Bloody Queen and Geisha.
Yeah.
But a Bonbon, left down blink is a very, very strong tie setup. But if you're pushing for a win with Anne, up down teleport can also be very, very strong.
Yeah. So we are going to see that N from DX here and on Moonlit. I'm very excited to see these well-controlled jumps here. I love seeing great jumps from Disciples. I'm barely able to pull them off, just barely. I can't do them consistently, but I just love seeing Disciples who are very, very good at jumping to those cats in all kinds of crazy directions and ways here. As we already talked about, CCB's comp is going to be First Officer, Antiquarian, Embalmer, and Acrobat, which, as we said, very strong comp here. I believe they're going quite strong here on this Moonlit, which is their map pick here against DX's Anne. But answering back with that Anne, really, really, really good tie hunter, but has so much potential for a 4K here, which is what DX is shooting for here. Just because lost that round one, going to go for that strong round two first half here for his team. Going to play, I would assume, aggressively to try to get that 4K here. with his Anne. So we're gonna have to see what happens here. We're getting
Now,
into the match here soon.
yeah, and one thing to note about Anne, if Anne decides to go for Embalmer first, the one way Anne wins is if she's able to get something off of the camp. She either wins by 2 fast downs or getting something off of the camp. Same way as Bonbon, they function very, very similarly. But the thing about having Embalmer is that he's able to rescue himself, so it's a much safer approach. If the Anne decides to chase the Embalmer from the survivor side, because they won't have to risk at least a first rescue. Um, and but one thing to note about Anne is I believe that Anne is actually a very, very strong pick against First Officer. And I think this is why Merc was taken off the table right away. Because Merc is actually a very, very strong character against Anne, basically a guaranteed rescue. But First Officer, if the cat ends up leeching onto the First Officer, even if he uses a pocket watch, the cat remains in place and is visible to the hunter, so the hunter can still see where the First Officer is. We are jumping right into the matchup.
Yep,
And
this is going to be round 2, first half here. CCB versus FBI. And we are going to see the chase onto Antiquarian here from the Disciple here, instantly canceling out that stick. Super dangerous ability here. Transitioning into Tent here, looking down for that Hunter's Instinct. Very, very, very good. Getting another
now
beautiful cat here.
it's very tricky playing against Antiquarian as an Anne because you want to make sure that you avoid getting hit by the stick at all costs. Of course, if you get hit by the stick and it goes right into the wall, you will not be able to swing for 4 seconds, which basically guarantees that you're going to have to use another cat to get another hit there. And excellent job using the jump to sort of bait right there. Excellent flywheel. And we're actually going to see... Yeah, the stick is going to come out once, but Blink is on the table, so this may be where the end of the kite goes. Antiquarian doing a nice job baiting at the slide. And ending up getting an excellent hit there, forcing out the trait. Now, if you're going to be going down as a survivor, what you should be thinking about is trying to find ways to pull out the trait. If the Anne is going to be running Blink, which we see that Anne actually was running Blink there. And the one main setback here is that the Anne actually got chaired on Acrobat Cypher.
Yeah. Really going to stop that Cypher pressure. The Cyphers were looking healthy, but unfortunately, this is going to significantly slow that Cypher rush here, and they might honestly have to go for this 2-man rescue here, just because the Ann's camp is so strong, as we talked about. This might be possible. It is going to be an after half save here. Oh, it is barely after half. That is so unfortunate. Gonna see a double down here too, I believe. Acrobat trying to red ball here, but DX just putting him on the ground, silencing him, and going for this Antiquarian, who will be seeing the manor if she does allow herself to get knocked down here.
Yeah, and I just want to point out the intricacies of that rescue that just happened, because the Embalmer was actually threatening to use the red bomb on the Antiquarian, which actually the red bomb actually makes it so that, yes, she's not able to throw out or call back her cats, but it also makes it so that if she gets red bombed, if you're in the stun radius, you actually don't get stunned either, which is a nice little tidbit for you survivors to know out there. So the Acrobat almost got an amazing rescue, but unfortunately just got hit slightly early to the point where it was past half. Excellent flywheel on the Antiquarian, just prolonging as much as possible, pulling out an additional cat, which is, once again, trying to promote that time mentality, making their way to the basement, trying to take this hunter away from the ciphers as much as possible. Now the survivors are going to reset here.
It will, as Music talked about, allow the survivors to reset, which is one of the strongest things about a cell, which of course they didn't do here, but this is basically the same thing. With that beautiful kite from Zach here, that will allow the survivors to avoid an immediate chase after the chair, which is so strong because then the hunter has to waste time looking for somebody. Might see the acrobat, is going to see the acrobat here, but as Music talked about earlier, the acrobat on fourth stop, not an ideal chase. Even if you're Ann, even if you cancel that ability, the acrobat can just jump before the cancel takes effect. There is going to be looking for, I believe, the first officer, or perhaps even the embalmer. Does see the first officer here. Two beautiful jumps. Might take the or the coaster here. First officer is going to be taking the coast. Oh, not opting not to take the coaster here.
It
Very
might have been
interesting
on
choice
cooldown.
considering your first officer.
And once again, we're seeing what I was talking about. The way that Anne was able to get that hit was because of the fact that Anne actually got the cat onto the first officer, which revealed the location there. So, yeah, and I was just about to comment that teleporting to Embalmer may have been a strong option there, both preventing that Cypher, and Embalmer would probably be the ideal survivor to chase here. Now, there is Flywheel here.
Canceling out that flywheel.
Come out. Yeah.
Is going to teleport on that final Cypher, which I believe is going to be primed here. They are going to be popping, and we are into the end game here with that teleport on cooldown. That is going to mean no potential teleport here on this gate, which we could be looking into a possible 3 escape because Dungeon is here, but I do believe we're going to say goodbye to this acrobat here. He does have a coffin on him, though, which is at the gate here. Oh, we might actually see a potential 3 escape here. First officer making his way around, seeming like I believe he does know where the dungeon is.
Yeah, and that was what seemed to be a completely tied situation. Now turns winning because let's see, where is first officer at?
First officer is on the
at the
dungeon.
dungeon.
We are going to
And
see a 3 escape round 2 first half from CCB survivors here. Wow, that was an intense matchup.
yeah, and now if you are the the hunter for
FBI.
CCB,
Oh, CCB.
yeah, you are very, very happy for this setup because now it means that you can prioritize a tie. And I believe this is a best of 3, right?
Yep, it is a best of 3, meaning if we do see that tie from CCB Hunter, we will be congratulating CCB's victory here in this matchup.
Yeah, so this basically means now the survivors have to get a 3-man. If they get a 3 escape, then that will make it so that it will go to a round 3 tiebreaker. However, well, it's not a tiebreaker because CCB will still have a win on rounds based on round 1, but the FBI will have one more chance to win round 3 and try to pull this set back into their favor. But FBI survivors need to win, so I think we will see some very aggressive survivor comps here. Now, typically, if you're the survivors here, some main differences if you're just seeking out a tie versus if you're seeking out a win. One character that tends to be very, very common in these types of setups is Batter, because Batter is one of those survivors that might actually be able to harass to a win. Basically, the comps that you need to win is where you have your Batter, your forward, your very, very aggressive harassment survivors. But yeah, that was a match that was looking very tied, but then as I had briefly gone in on round 1, Embalmer can sometimes have some very clutch plays by painting the survivor into his coffin and placing it right next to the gate, which ended up playing very, very well into their favor.
Yeah. DX with the teleport there, trying to be aggressive, trying to shut down that Cypher. But as we saw, Acrobat just pushing it away, just being the Cypher's primed. My friend Embalmer is going to coffin me, and I'm going to get out of here. Unfortunately, with no trait for endgame and no sight on any survivors after that coffin, it was really, really, really well played from the CCB survivors there. So FBI survivors have to answer back here with minimum of a 3K, ideally a 4K, so they can grab this round 2 victory here. which will propel them into the third round. So to recap, they just need a 3 escape to propel them, just to survive to that third round. But if CCB Hunter Zach does get a tie here, we will be seeing CCB move on here. And as we said, and usually a tie hunter, but with the setup that CCB survivors have had, with the coffin on Acrobat and the um, beautiful dungeon escape from Officer, it's just they have to FBI survivors have to answer back strong here. Got to get that 3K or that 4K to push ahead or just to keep it going.
Yeah. So now if you're CCB's Hunter, now is where we're probably going to see the Bloody Queen. We might still see a reverse Anne. I think it will make sense that they're going to probably ban the Sculptor. We see a Priestess and Seer ban, which is pretty standard on this map. Usually the 3 bans you see on this map, Priestess, Seer, or sometimes Antiquarian, but the reason why you don't typically ban Acrobat or Patient or Aeroplanist is because they all do essentially the same thing. So if you ban one, you're just running into another survivor that does pretty much the same thing in the early game, which is what you're typically trying to avoid. But Priestess and Seer, what this does is this cuts off the survivor's options for support.
Yeah, very interesting, very good bans here from CCB Hunter Zach here. Just trying to go for that safe tie. They are going to be banning Gamekeeper. Interesting ban from FBI here. I don't believe Zach plays Gamekeeper. I may be mistaken here. We are going to see FBI picking the Cheerleader and the Merc here. Cheerleader and Merc, pretty strong survivors here. Tell me a little bit more about Cheerleader there, Music.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that they chose. It's not surprising that they picked Cheer. I think it's very interesting that they put Cheer as their first lock of the setup. Typically, the Hunter is not going to ban Cheerleader, but I think what the survivors are trying to go for, Cheerleader is arguably one of the strongest transitional characters in this game, with 2 very, very fast dashes and the ability to reset cooldowns. I do think it's very interesting that they banned the Gamekeeper. This frees up the Sculptor again, which I believe is Zach's main, so they're kind of going back into it. Zach, even though they ran detention, no detention round 1, what they could do is they could run a left down blink build, which is very, very tie oriented. Of course, Insolence being very, very good on Sculptor because Sculptor does tend to snowball once she's able to get to max presence. So I think that might be the other tie option would be if you go like up down blink. That tends to be the other very tie oriented setup, which I mean, at this point, the Hunter only has to play for a tie, so they don't have to go super aggressive, and they're leaving this Hunter's comfort round 1 Hunter up for grabs. That ended up getting a 3K during the first round, so I don't think it'll be very surprising if they end up opting for that as their Hunter.
Yeah. As we said, Zach could play that Sculptor here, but we also see an available. Last time in this tournament, the first matchup CCB played in, I believe Zach played Bloody Queen on Moonlit River Park. So we could be seeing a Bloody Queen. We are going to be seeing a Cowboy pick from FBI Survivors. Listen, I'm a Cowboy main. I love Cowboy. I love to see it. And also, with his new recent buff, he could be very strong in this matchup. He is pretty strong. Not meta, but still quite strong. And I am going to love to see the plays that FBI Survivors take here with this Cowboy in this round 2 second half here.
Yeah, and I would actually argue that Cowboy is a very, very strong pick here. If you're expecting to go against a Sculptor Bloody Queen main, or wait, hold on, who's hunting now?
Zach.
I lost track.
Yeah, CCB Zach. So yeah, it is a Sculptor Bloody Queen main.
Okay, yeah, so this is the Sculptor Bloody Queen. Yeah, because Sculptor and Bloody Queen both tend to be relatively weaker to transitional kiters, And one thing that Cowboy can do that's very, very strong against Bloody Queen is if Bloody Queen ends up mirroring the Survivor, what the Cowboy can do is threaten to lasso back over the Hunter. So if Cowboy ends up going for that lasso, it basically renders the mirror useless because you end up doing a full 180 on the Hunter. So I think in combination with Cheerleader and Acrobat, three very, very strong transitional characters, I won't be surprised if we see something maybe potentially a little different from this Hunter. But of course, the Sculptor is... Never mind, locking in Geisha, which actually is perfect against a comp like this, because Geisha is very, very strong against transitional kiters.
Yeah, as we said, with the Geisha, if a Cheerleader dashes away, if an Acrobat balls, if a Cowboy lassos a Pallet or a Cypher, you can just answer right back with a dash and catch right up to them in most cases, because those abilities don't really create enough distance to where it will be more than a Geisha dash. So I'm very interested to see how the FBI survivors answer to this. I mean, basically counterpick here from CCB's Hunter Zach here. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this matchup here.
Yeah, and this Geisha only needs a tie. I think we'll probably expect to see the standard trump card detention blink build. Geisha usually doesn't tend to stray away from that type of setup, especially when she needs to get a tie here. I think we'll expect to see... I know that Psyche does play Cowboy, so we'll probably see Psyche on the Cowboy there. And if you have Cowboy, I'm very interested to see what they opt to go for a spawn setup. They might end up putting... Of course, you're going to put Acro at the 4th stop, Mercenary at the Bridge Cypher. But I think it's Survivor's choice whether they put Cheerleader in 2-story or Cowboy in 2-story. It's basically whether they want the Cowboy to kite or they want the Cheerleader to kite.
Yeah, very, very, very strong matchup here with the Geisha. And the spawns are really going to show us what exactly or how exactly the match will play out. But it really is going to boil down to how these survivors play and respond to this Geisha here. We are going to be getting into spawns here. Looking like pretty normal spawns, relatively normal spawns, allowing Acrobat to transition down to that 4-stop area here. I wonder who Zach's going to choose to chase here.
And it actually looks like Psyche is going to be on the Acrobat here. So I got one mispredict this tourney. One mispredict. So what the survivors want happen is, yeah, they're going to go for this, and they want Psyche to kite. So we're going to see Zach will likely make their way to the 4th stop here. And I believe if they end up going the trump card build, I believe first stop gets blocked from here. I'm not positive. It's either first stop or God Kite. I forget which one it is, but I believe it's first stop.
The first stop Cypher, yes. So we are going to be getting into the possible last match of the game. CCB versus FBI. CCB hunting FBI survivors here. We're just going to see all CCB needs is a tie, and FBI survivors need to answer back with a 3K or more here.
An interesting transition from Psyche here. Psyche ends up making their way towards the kind of walls area, doubling back into these 2 pallets here, and kind of taking a long route by the spawn select, but ending up making their way to a totally fightable area here. Excellent bomb from Psyche. Now, this does end up being the white bomb here, which is sometimes... It would have been nice if the Geisha had to break one of those pallets there. But Psyche's going to be able to buy lots of time getting a pallet stun here. Now, what we are seeing is a detention and then pallet breaking, not going all the way up, but this is essentially an up-down build. There are not a lot of windows that you necessarily need to block off on this map, but we do see teleport on this build, which is sometimes a very aggressive build there. And once again, Psyche...
Beautiful pickup, yep.
Yeah, picking up the butterfly
dash. he is going to be able to transition into this 4-stop area here, which, as we discussed, is super strong against really any hunter, most hunters here. He is going to believe, getting that drop down hit. Unfortunately, a little bit of a misstep from Psyche here, which is going to allow that down. Not too early. Ciphers are looking pretty healthy here. We are going to see a teleport from the Geisha as her trait. No trump card available here, which is quite a interesting, kind of aggressive play here. Probably looking to utilize it for maybe a prime cipher, or I would imagine to catch off somebody off guard here. Beautiful rescue from Elio here, the mercenary. And Psyche here is just going to have to survive and do his best here.
Yeah, and once again, beautiful rescue by Eli there. Now, the thing is that the survivors need to be winning. Now, the survivors are in a great position to like tie from here. But unless Psyche does an absolutely amazing rebound kite, which looks like may potentially happen here, Cowboy coming in to harass here. Psyche really needs to have a really nice rebound here because the survivors can't be satisfied by a tie. They need to win from here.
Yeah, honestly, with this harass, if Cheerleader just starting a new cipher now, if they are able to harass out these ciphers here, Psyche will only be on second chair here, looking for a little bit of a red light trick, dash through the window, but without that full presence. Oh, just now reaching the full presence. We are going to see the Cowboy here. Are we going to see the potential harass from Cowboy here? A little bit of a misstep on the dash here, cutting onto the Cheerleader cipher. But Zach here just trying to keep that pressure. Beautiful pallet stun, but is going to get hit through the pallet here, which does mean there's injuries all across the board here. It's looking quite dangerous for FBI survivors, but they are still most definitely in this.
Yeah, and Cowboy's going to be here looking to harass. Actually gets the pickup there. And
beautiful lasso from Cowboy here. Oh, unfortunately, missing the lasso. Does flywheel beautifully here, but that is okay because that is only going to put Psyche on his second chair here, and the ciphers are looking okay here. I believe that's 130 to 40% here. Eli is taking a hit here. Probably going to have to elbow pad in here. Elbow padding in. A teleport onto the chair. Psyche
this is
no
a super aggressive option, but it makes sense because first priority needs to be given.
Missing the lasso again, unfortunately. That will be.
Yeah.
We will be saying goodbye to Psyche. He will be returning to the manor, and honestly, it is looking pretty bad here. That is going to be a basement chair for Zach here. It's looking pretty bad for FBI survivors here.
Yeah, this is very tough because the Geisha only needs to tie here, and it was very unfortunate that this basement ends up being right on the last cipher. So not only does the Geisha get a strong camping setup, but the Geisha also ends up harassing the last cipher from here. And they are going to be making their way into the basement. It's just kind of unclear as to how the survivors plan on actually getting out of the basement. And switching targets to the Cheerleader, which actually I think is a very strong play from this hunter because Cheerleader will have a much more difficult time getting out of basement.
Yeah, but this does allow the Merc to save an elbow pad and get out of basement. Geisha here might go harass the Cypher, is choosing to go harass the Cypher, push this Cowboy off of the last Cypher here. A beautiful Terror Shock from the Geisha here. And is going to be dashing back to this basement here to keep the pressure on those survivors and make sure they aren't allowed to reset.
Yeah, and once again, we're going to see beautiful elbow pad to get out of basement, but unfortunately that kind of leaves Cheerleader in no man's land here and is going to be shared once again. And this mercenary has to go for this rescue, and then Cowboy has to pick themselves up. Now, Geisha may go aggressive for that Cypher, but I believe this Cypher is not going to be enough. It's at around 50% here. But once again, this Geisha going in super aggressively. Gets the pallet stun, which actually might make it so that the rescue is actually able to happen. And it looks like Cowboy might be carrying yeah, is carrying extra pallet stun, so
Ooh, Cheerleader is able to get out of the basement here. That is so. That is so. Getting another hit out here. Merc, just looking to body block here for the Cypher. Going back to Cowboy here. Doesn't really have a choice here. Cowboy does still have some lasso here. Should be able to survive, I believe here. Trying to get rid of that. Ooh, does go
trying to
down here, but
predict the fly
this
wheel, but it
will
didn't
allow
come
them
out.
to reset here. She's gonna chair on this last Cypher here. But yeah, it's FBS Survivor is really hanging on by a thread here, but playing quite fantastically. They are able to reset the cheerleader here. Merc canceling out that dash there, but is going to be going down here. That will be a rescue. The issue they have here is that they are staying and dying by these two ciphers that are being decoded. They really need to. They don't really have a choice, obviously, because the only other cipher there is the one all the way at first stop. So they don't really have a choice here. Beautiful dodges from the cheerleader here, but it looks inevitable. But there's nothing said and done until we say goodbye to another survivor. They're really just holding on quite well here.
Yeah,
Oh, but
and the
that
thing,
is. Go ahead.
yeah, cheerleader is dead on share, so that will be sending the cheerleader back to the manor, and the survivors will be rushing the final cipher here.
Yeah, we will be saying congratulations to CCB here. Played fantastically. FBI played fantastic as well. But as we said, only needing that tie here. Zach going above and beyond, looking like to get, yep, gonna be a 4K elimination here. We will be saying congratulations to CCB, who will be moving on. But yeah, FBI, well fought, almost having it there, but unfortunately fell a little short due to just really the strong danger that is Zach's Geisha.
Yes, for sure. And just showing just the power of Geisha and also the difficulties that survivors can have when they try to go for a win against a Geisha. Like it's one thing the survivors could have found themselves in a tieable position in there, but at the end they just were not able to separate from the cipher and prime it in time, and that ended up leading to the survivor downfall there. But once again, congratulations and GG's to CCB. Um, which will be making it on to the next round. I'm
Yeah,
Music Man and
I'm
BT.
BT. We're your commentators. Thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you for tuning in. This was a very exciting matchup to commentate. Very, very, very great plays on both sides. I look forward to seeing CCB's future matchups, and I hope to see FBI in a future Lilicrow tournament.
Yes, for sure.